Welcome back everyone to the Ultimate Fire Emblem Ironman Challenge. Last episode I made a couple of mistakes, and I think the big one was not really explaining any of the more wonky mechanics. For instance, I never really explained things in Thracia or Gaiden. I just kind of assumed everyone knew what was going on, which realistically they don't. I also didn't explain why I say Shadow Dragon and Fire Emblem 12 are really difficult, so I'll try to take more time in this video to do just that. Last episode I had two polls, one of which was to figure out who would get the Villager Forks in SOV, the winner of which was Bowie and Mycen and Volbar. So 2 out of 3 of those I will gladly accept, but Mycen is a little bit of a dick move. The other one was Draco Knight Jagan won over Sniper and Swordmaster, which I was kind of hoping for Sniper, honestly. Not because it's good, but because it'd be fun, but I guess you guys are just too nice to me. A link to the previous episode is going to be in the top right corner, but outside of that, I hope you enjoy. Stepping into Chapter 2 of Fire Emblem 1, this map isn't all that difficult. Well, it sort of is, but not in the conventional, oh god, this enemy's gonna fuck me up way. More in the, well, I just can't read Japanese way. So for instance, I never really was killed by enemies, but sometimes menu flubs would kind of mess me up, and I would just end up ending turn with Jagan at 3 health, and you're just like, well, shit. But for the most part, I wasn't worried. So heading into the map, I just went through my usual strategy. I had Doga choke this point up in the top right corner, and I used Barst and Gordon to support him. Everyone else, I just moved onwards. Daros, who starts where the thieves are up in that corner, he just ignores everyone and starts marching towards Marth. So he ended up playing a chasing game for like 8 turns as everyone else was pushing to the left. The map wasn't super difficult. Again, Doga just doesn't take any damage from those guys in the top right. And outside of that, I just had everyone else push forward. Interestingly enough, the most intimidating enemy was actually probably Castor, who, when he's on the enemy's team, he has better base stats than most of them, and you have to carefully bait him in. It's not difficult, don't get me wrong, but it is more difficult than the rest. In any case, I recruit him rather easily with Sita, but the turn after I recruit him is where I have some difficulties. At this point, there's like 2 Cavaliers, a Pirate, an Archer in front, and then there's also a Pirate in the back. So I wanted to play carefully, and I ended up having to use every single one of my units to kill all the units in front, and that left me with like 3 or 4 to deal with the last pirate, who just kept on fucking dodging. In the end, it came down to Board. He's not the most accurate person, so I was really banking on this one Iron Axe hit at like 70%. Luckily for me, he hit it. Wait, shit, that was Daros! Yeah, so there's no way of telling that's Daros unless you look at him before the fight or can read Japanese, because he has 1 line of dialogue, but it looks like system text. So I thought this is just a pirate and it's telling me I'm gonna get a critical hit or something, right? No, god, no, that was Daros. Now, technically he was never even on my team, so I can't be too sad, but this does count as a death in Fire Emblem 1. I'm kind of ashamed of myself, honestly. But Daros' death aside, we must press on. I played through the rest of the map a little bit more cautiously now because I was like, well, I don't want to do that again. But in the end, it was still no worry. I made it to the boss, who's an absolute joke in this, and I'm pretty sure I ended up giving the kill to Sita, and both her and Marth actually ended up with these crazy level ups, which in this game it just doesn't happen because people have low growths. So things are looking very good for my team. For those of you who aren't familiar with Gaiden, you're probably not aware of how janky it is. And I haven't been exposed to a lot of it yet, but starting with this part, we start to see it a little bit. The first instance of this is this Leather Shield Mercenary in map number 1. This guy is a bitch to kill. First of all, he dodges like crazy. He's speedy as hell, so he can double anyone on my team, even the people I just promoted to mercenaries, and he has a leather shield, which means he doesn't take that much damage. And, well, I just kind of gimmicked him to death. I created a wall with units that could take a couple of hits, and then if they got too low, I would just swap them out with another, and if I really needed to, I would just heal with Silk. This wall allowed me to attack with my mages Gray and Silk, who just eventually whittled him down. He did dodge 4 Nosferatus in a row, which is a little annoying, but I mean, it's Nosferatu, so not too surprising. Silk managed to grab a level up from that and the leather shield with it. I do have to mention real quick before we move on, this soundtrack is fucking sick though. Okay, I hope you enjoyed your fleeting moment of happiness, because we are now going straight into the bowels of hell. This map is painful. Hit rates are garbage, enemies are tanky, and this archer is a bitch. He comes equipped with a steel bow, which in this game gives you 5 range. Also, too much goddamn attack. He hits like a truck, and with your vulnerable units like your mercenaries or silk, you'll end up doing like half of their health in a single round. To add to that, you have to march all the way around to get to him and actually kill him, unless you want to risk sending Silk or Grey, but they're pretty untanky, so they'll just die. In the end, that was the entire challenge of this map, was just dealing with this little cunt muffin. Eventually, Silk got the kill, which was really satisfying. I guess the universe was making up for the 4 misses earlier on, and she basically hit everything on this map, which is amazing. And she got the level up for it too. I move on and pick up the Thunder Sword, which will probably go to Cliff for now, and later on, once he needs it, I'll probably give it to Tobin to just extend his usefulness a little bit. I also recruit Claire, who is living proof that Pegasus Knights can still be garbage, and we love her for that. This map is a pretty clear-cut copy, so it doesn't have much of an identity of its own. As a result, I'm going to go ahead and just try to get through this as quickly as possible. We once again recruit Ogma and his squad, which, by the way, Ogma, probably the best design in the series up to this point. His squad, on the other hand, not so much. I make it through the rest of the map with basically no problems. I got a crap ton of critical hits for some reason, and it was beautiful. And at the end of the day, I just made it to the boss, who wasn't that big of a deal. He has a hand axe this time around, so he's tougher than a Fire Emblem 1, but if you play cautiously, you can basically just give the kill to whoever you want without any trouble. I gave it to Kain because Kain's really good. Book 2 is the first game in the series that's really difficult in a conventional way. By Chapter 2, they're already throwing promoted Draco Knights your way, and these guys are a bitch to kill. That is, if you don't have an archer on your team, but you do have 3 by this point. Unfortunately for you, Book 2 hates archers. This is Chapter 2, right here. This is the map. It is big, and it is covered in forests. Archers have 1 move in forests, so getting them from here to there, absolute nightmare. I already don't like Book 2, so I was playing pretty impatiently, and it started to bite me in the ass. At one point, I moved Rhodey perfectly within range of a Draco Knight without realizing it, and he got charged. The Draco Knight actually didn't kill him, but there were 3 other units nearby, and by the time the 3rd one got to attacking, yeah. Unfortunately, there was nothing I could do at that point. Rhodey became the first loss of Book 2. I thought I was going to lose another unit to menu flubs because I accidentally dismounted Aaron instead of trading him the Silver Lance, but lucky for me, that didn't happen. Unluckily for me, the game still hates me, and I missed 3 about 80%, only 1 of which was needed to kill a soldier, and that ultimately resulted in a Warren, the bridge key himself, getting killed. After that, I pushed through the rest of the map a lot more carefully. I lost the Lady Sword because I didn't understand how the game mechanics worked, and in the end, I managed to push all the way to the boss, where Ryan got the kill by a lucky critical hit. I was trying to give it to Gordon, but Ryan got it anyways. I really leaned into Katria by the end of it, and she's definitely the MVP of this map. Being able to fly above terrain in this game is a huge advantage because the maps are covered. Cecil is probably going to be shafted to 2nd best on my team, and by that I mean Paula joins next chapter, so 3rd best, but it was fun while it lasted. If you know literally nothing about Genealogy of the Holy War, well, first of all, drop this video right now and go play it. But if you decide not to do that, you'd be pretty surprised by the stuff you see. One of the niches that this game has is, this is your base castle, which everyone starts inside of that. If you go in there, you can enter the arena freely. If you die in the arena, well, you don't actually die. You get left with 1 HP. So that means you can just mess around with it as much as you want. And I did that a lot in this chapter. Only Sigurd made it to the end, and after that there was a steep drop-off. Now, I didn't send everyone, but of the people I did send, Alec actually made it the farthest, making it all the way to the 4th round of combat. Actually, I think he won the 4th round of combat. So I made a lot of money and a lot of EXP. Arden also did surprisingly well, by the way. I thought was worth noting. But I didn't want to spend too much time in this, so the very next turn I started charging down. I met with Kinboys and his army right here, which was exactly how I had planned it. And this begins some of my favorite parts of the entire game. The early game of Fire Emblem 4 is a little bit too difficult for you to just solo with one unit. So you have to use every single member of your team, even the ones you wouldn't expect. Like Azel is a footy, you have to use him. Arden is a footy, you have to use him. Well, okay, you don't have to really, but like, I like to. And it feels great. In that chapter, in order to avoid death, you're really heavily incentivized to move as many of your units as you can and kill them as quickly as possible. And I did just that. I ultimately did not want to wait an extra turn and risk having someone die, so Lex could not get the hand axe. Azel ended up getting the boss kill instead. Around this time, Doom and Nadine were saved, but the same could not be said about the villages. And that brought me to the real boss of this part of the map, Ira. Yeah, the real challenge is not killing her or not having her kill someone. My strategy involved putting Quan over here and Sigurd lying in wait up there. Quan would bait in Ira and Sigurd would go in while she's distracted, take Genoa, and then I'd be able to talk to her. Went almost perfectly, except Ira started charging towards my guys who were waiting up here. Yeah, that scared the living shit out of me, but luckily, once Sigurd conquered Genoa, she started coming back to him and I was able to recruit her. Thracia is janky as hell. That's the most important thing you need to know about it. Sometimes there's just gonna be moments where you have to go, what the fuck? And then move on. The early game is easily the least of the jank, so chapter 2 was not that much of a worry to me. I get my favorite unit in this chapter, Ronan, who basically epitomizes all of this. Now I played through Thracia on my stream, and right as Ronan joined, I tried to set up a kill with him. And it did not go as planned.
Longer ballisticians.
Oh yeah. Well, ballisticians are interesting.
I know they're bad, but I love them.
Damn it, Tanya, I was trying to give that kill to Ronan. How dare you? I'm trying to play shameless favoritism here. Ah! Oh my god, yes! While Tanya was busy doing that, Leaf ended up leveling up twice, and thanks, I hate it. I streamed Fire Emblem 6 immediately after Thracia, and while I would say that this game is definitely more difficult, I wasn't super worried about it. Most of the difficulty in this game comes from getting screwed over by random number generators, which is true in all Fire Emblem games, but it happens so much more in this than anywhere else. You're constantly dealing with 70% hit rates at the highest for some of your units, and in the early game it can be the difference between life or death. In the first two chapters, our main concerns were the fighters. However, by now we start to get units that can completely eviscerate them. For instance, Lance, Alan, Deacon, Marcus. With a sword, they're basically completely invulnerable to fighters because their hit rates are like 10%. The soldiers, while they're somewhat intimidating, get destroyed by some of the crappiest units on our team. Lot and Wade one round KO them, and even Boars can start doubling them if he gets a speed proc, which is actually pretty likely. I spent a good amount of effort leveling up Shauna, and this is what I got out of it. Nice. Very cool. Now, unlike Chapter 1, where I cut it way too close, I never had any near-death experiences in Chapter 2. I don't even know if there was any point where it was a mathematical possibility. The final roadblock of the map was Rude, he's not very difficult. Deke with an Armor Slayer just makes a mockery out of him. And once I beat him, it was just a simple seize away from finishing Chapter 2. Lin mode is stupid easy. We shitposted about Glass. Kent and Sane did their best impersonation of a mage killer, and we seized a throne. There's not much to see here. So, I'm not gonna lie, I completely deleted this chapter from my memory. I went to open up my DS, and when I looked at the save file, I was surprised to see that Chapter 3 was next up, not Chapter 2. Luckily for me, I took notes, so I can prove that it did happen, and they say, embodied by random numbers, using Ross. Yeah, that's not me, I used Ross. Seth killed the boss and got a strength and speed level up. I needed Seth to kill the boss, that is so sad, and luck wasn't on my side. I just sound like a bitch, honestly. Chapter 2 of Path of Radiance is a little more difficult than the previous one because you don't have Titania for the first 2 turns, but it's Path of Radiance, so I'm not worried about it at all. That said, I went live and chat mocked me relentlessly for almost losing the run in Chapter 2, going directly against what I just said. I kind of bit off more than I could chew. Took on 8 or so enemies, no, like 6 or so enemies, while only having 3 combat units of my own. And I had to enact defensive formation to protect Rice and Boyd, who are both extremely squishy units. But then Titania joined and everything was fine. I didn't even use her in the end, it's just like having an extra roadblock was super helpful. After that I moved on, no problem, to the rest of the map. Boyd ended up getting the boss kill, and Rolf and Mist were saved. I feel like it's worth noting here, I pledged chat that I would be using my Seraph Robe on Astrid, so I am now locked into using Astrid. Yeah! And one last thing, the iron swords that I complained about last video, turns out that's actually a glitch. Admittedly a very common glitch, but it's still a bug. Radiant Dawn Part 1 continues to be pretty damn difficult. I actually would have lost a unit, but we're still at the phase in the Dawn Brigade where every single unit death is just a reset. What happened was I just didn't move Laura far enough. She gets doubled, she doesn't have any speed, so she just died. It was a really stupid miscalculation on my part, but the reset did give me a chance to change up my strategy, and it worked really, really well. I charged up the ledge, I grabbed all the chests, got some pretty sick level ups, and I gave the Draco Shield to Edward. I can't help it, man. Edward is not the best in this game. If you don't know, Radiant Dawn is just kind of all over the place. The availability makes it so certain units just get shafted completely. Now, Edward as a part of the Dawn Brigade, which is your Part 1 units, he's really good. Outside of that context, he's absolutely I wouldn't say he's absolutely terrible, but he's definitely mediocre. If the rest of Radiant Dawn were as good as Part 1, it would easily be up there for one of my favorite games in the series. But sadly, they take a pretty steep drop off. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I wanted to go into detail about why Shadow Dragon is the beginning of difficulty hell. Around this point in the series, games start to get really, really hard, and at the center of it all is this. That attack stat right there, that is scary. You never see anything like this up to this point in the series, because in Chapter 2, you're already dealing with enemies that can 2-hit KO your entire team, more or less. It may not even seem that high, but when you consider that you only have an average of 21 HP and 6 defense on your units, it's almost impossible to deal with these enemies all at once. You have to do it in player phase, you have to use your whole team. Personally, I think it's pretty damn well designed. What this really means is that all it takes is for one thing that you did not account for you to mess up. It's brutal, but it keeps you accountable, and it's really fair. For the most part. Later on it won't get as fair, but for now it's fair. I started this map much like I did all the previous iterations of it. I sent Drogue up here to choke a point alongside Barst, because he's my next tankiest unit, while everyone else was getting ready to defend around these 2 bridges. Now, when I placed Drogue to choke that point, I made a miscalculation. It was basic arithmetic, just attack minus defense. I was off by 1, but that was all it took. The pirate came and attacked, and he did 2 extra damage, because he doubled me. And with Drogue at 4 HP, and an archer in range, the odds of me surviving were minuscule. The archer doubled for 2 damage, 1% chance to miss. And, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen. So, just like that, my tankiest unit, dead. I was so sure that Marth, who was now left exposed, was going to end up dying that I didn't even bother taking a screenshot. But he survived somehow. And in the end, I continued on with this run. The rest of the map progressed pretty normally, but I was forced to bust out Jade and Silverlance to deal with this douchebag who dodged 4 of my 65 to 78% hit rates. In the end, Casper was recruited, and we made it to the boss without too much difficulty. But here's the thing. If you don't know Shadow Dragon Part 5, the bosses are some of the hardest bosses in the series. This is Gomer. First of all, nice name. Second of all, the dude has so much speed and strength. If he does not 1-round KO you because he's fast enough to double, He will one-hit KO you because he's strong enough to kill you with a hand axe. I had exactly 4 units that did not get 1 round KO'd by him. Jagen, Ogma, Barst, and Abel. This fort allows you to heal, and I have Rice on my team. I also have a vulnerary with 3 uses, so my goal was to, as efficiently as possible, cycle between Ogma, Barst, and Jagen. Whoever just got hit, retreat, put them on the fort, heal with Rice if I need to, heal with the vulnerary. Steel Axe did a decent amount of damage, Steel Sword did a decent amount of damage, and Silver Lance did a lot of damage, but none of them really were doing enough for any significant progress to be made. So it was a slow grind. And eventually, I was starting to run out of heal uses when Ogma got a 5% critical hit. It wasn't enough to kill, but the very next turn I said, Ogma deserves it, man. He just saved my ass. So I let him get the kill, and he got this level up. Thanks, If Shadow Dragon was the beginning of difficulty hell, then Fire Emblem 12 is surely the peak. This game is absolutely insane, and I think I need to take a moment to explain exactly why that is. These games all have one thing in common, and that is that they are all player phase games. What this means is that the majority of the combat is going to be taking place on your player phase, and enemy phase is usually used to set up. The reason why it's like this is because enemies are terrifying. This is a Chapter 2 enemy, a Draco Knight with 26 attack. And there's a lot like him. There's 5 in this map, and that's not even including the boss. Having really high offense enemies like that means that enemy phase is all about baiting in ones you can handle, carefully calculating how to survive a hit, and player phase is all about dishing out damage while still surviving and leaving no enemies by enemy phase. With Hard 3 having such difficult enemies, getting through this all requires super pinpoint precision. You can still miss on player phase, that's not a huge deal, but you need to be smart. You need to be able to adapt, and you need to be good at Fire Emblem. I personally love it. Now, that said, I'm not that good at Fire Emblem, so I needed a couple of trial runs in order to get through it. I have a max of 3 trial runs that I'm allowed, and I used all of them to come up with a strategy that would allow me to get through Chapter 2 without any resets. See, the first part is relatively easy. I actually made it through that first trial on every single one of my runs, no difficulty. But the second part, with the bosses, is hard as hell. I had a Luke and an Aaron that were both very, very good, so they could take a hit and survive and then vulnerary up to heal. I moved them on the side so they could bait out these true Draco Knights on either side, and then the rest of my team would be focused on taking down the first 3 Draco Knights. Not an easy feat by any means, but since you have 3 archers on your team by this point, and I reclassed already to be another one, definitely feasible. But it's worth noting that even my tankiest unit here, looking for love, is going to get absolutely obliterated by these guys. 18 defense, weapon triangle disadvantage, 26 attack, you're dealing with basically 9 damage times 2. He doesn't have enough HP to take more than 1 round of abuse from these guys. And that's my tankiest unit. I managed to make it through on my actual attempt, first try. Using this strategy, I succeeded, and luckily for me, I made it through without any losses. I really want to point out that I managed to make it through Fire Emblem 12 Hard 3 without any losses, but Book 2, the exact same map except easier, I lost 2 units. I don't understand me sometimes. Awakening Lunatic, at least early in the game, takes a lot from New Mystery of the Emblems playbook. And by that I mean, they make the enemies terrifying. Now, I wouldn't say they're quite on the same level, but I was worried enough that I thought Chapter 1, a map I had struggled with before, might actually mark the end of my run. But I did a little bit of research, I strategized a little bit, looked online, saw some advice, and I managed to make it through. Now, a lot of it is relying on Frederick as a crutch. He's really good early on, and I think a lot of people have a tendency to abuse that, as well as the silver lance he comes with. So I tried to just use him and his bronze sword moderately, and then give a lot of EXP to Linnea and even a little bit to Chrom, because they're both decently good units. Well, Linnea's just busted as hell. So in the end, I actually managed to give Linnea several kills, including the boss kill, which allowed me to get this level up, which is amazing and bodes well for the future. Outside of that, I also recruited Virion and Sully, and while a lot of people shit on Virion, I still use him plenty. But we're getting to 2 of the maps I'm easily the most terrified of. Chapter 2, and later on, Chapter 5. Alright, let's just get this over with. This map hates me, and I hate it. But not in the usual, like, oh god, I hate this map, it's so difficult and bullshit way. It's just kind of bad. It's slow, hit rates are garbage, and, well, there's not too much to it. It introduces Dragon Veins, but really all it serves in this one is like, hey, this is the objectively better path, take it. I struggled a lot here. I made the stupid mistake of trying to take on these guys, and Gunter almost died in Chapter 2. And then I did the rational thing and I moved south. That said, my hit rates were so bad against the boss of this map that I was not in a good position. I made it to this part. I had missed 5 68%. I was at this point basically on deathbed, and if I even got hit one more time, if I were to miss once, their game was over. Luckily for me, I managed to hit, and after an absolutely ungodly amount of turns, I made it through the map. Oh boy, it's the exact same map. Same gimmicks, same problems, same slow as balls pace. I love it. I got a little luckier in hit rates, so I finished slightly faster. That's all I have to say about it. Look, right now, all the routes are identical. What I have to say about one applies to the other 3. That said, Revelations was definitely the most tolerable of these 3. But that goes down entirely to John Period being right now the best of my 3 lords. John Period can deal with all of these guys pretty well, actually. And only 15 turns, wow! Towards the end of the challenge, I have to admit, it starts to get a little bit repetitive. Between Echoes, New Mystery, and Shadow Dragon, there's a lot of remakes, and while I think they all feel distinguished enough from the rest, there's also the problem of Fates and 3 Houses, where it's just the same maps literally over and over again, and there's almost no difference to it. At least with Echoes, it's a straight upgrade to Gaiden in literally every single way, so it's a lot more tolerable, and, well, I love this game, so that certainly helps too. The UI in particular is literally life-saving, and the hit rates are up a little bit, not by much, but enough that it's noticeable. That said, this map is still a bitch, and I still do hate it. But I was able to deal with this guy a lot more easily. Archer bitch is not as much of a problem anymore, so the chapter was relatively easy. That said, Silk level resistance? What? Twice? What? Yeah, Silk levels up resistance twice, which that's a 2% growth in a row, by the way. This reminds me of this video that I once saw by Who Is This Jit? And it's a very stupid Fire Emblem challenge where your only goal is to get Barth up to 20 resistance. He has a 2% growth. If you're not buying talismans, the only way to do that is just defy all odds. It is statistically more probable that he gets through the whole game not leveling resistance once than actually gaining any. That said, in that run, they're very surprised because twice over the whole run, Barth levels resistance. I just leveled it twice in a row. What the hell? After I beat those 2 levels and then Silk did that, I moved on to the little base here, where I recruited the lightning. I mean, wasn't that a meme at some point? Like the lightning sword is a better character than Claire? I think that was. Well, you know what? It fits anyways. I recruited the lightning sword, who is going to be the best character on my team for a little bit, and Claire, who is yet again proof that Pegasus Knights can actually be shitty. This map heavily takes advantage of group AI and high offensive enemies, which means that you really have to strategize and optimally position your units during enemy phase, and once again you get that brilliant player phase that I praise so much, and it makes for a really, really fun map. Though it is a little bit slow, I will admit. I struggled a lot with rogues that have pass, and right now the archers, even though they have iron bows, they're terrifying because they can do an extra 6 damage with their special skill Poison Strike, and they also double most of my enemies because they have 14 attack speed. My best way of dealing with units in this map is Claude right now because his attack speed is enough to survive, but he's not really tanky, and of course he's an archer, so he's severely limited. Really, my savior was surprisingly enough a Raphael, a unit who in my previous run of Golden Deer I never used once, basically. So to see Raphael basically become my MVP in this map was seriously surprising. Raphael ends up having 36 HP and 8 defense, which is really good out of a tanky unit. Plus with gauntlets, he can do a decent amount of damage, and if I really want to, he can use smash with an iron or steel axe, and that'll mean he's putting out decent damage at the same time. I tried to spread out kills evenly. I even benched Sylvain because of that, but that was a terrible call. Sylvain is really good because he gets the Lance of Ruin early on, and like he joins at a higher base level. I should have used him basically. Everyone ended up being relatively on par in the end as I finished up the map, no real difficulty. Moving on to the Black Eagles route, all I have to say is Edelgard, man. She's so good in this route. She has enough attack that she can basically perfectly leave any unit within kill range. That means she's perfect for setting up kills, for evening the playing field. But if I really need a kill desperately, she's also perfect there. In a really weird sense, she almost fits what I want out of a Jagen, except for the fact where she can totally steamroll if you level her up too much. What really made this map different and made everyone useful was that I learned to give everyone a bow. It costed a lot of money, kind of bankrupted me a little bit. But this was ultimately a very, very good idea so that I could do damage without getting counterattacked against, say, the rogues who do way too much damage. This ultimately brought everyone up to a certain level, except now Bernadetta, whose sole gimmick was having iron bows, is now completely useless and will be getting benched for Sylvain. The Church of Seros route was definitely the most fun one because by this point I had learned the map and I had changed up the rules of the characters. I was trying to do something new with them. Once again, I gave all of my units iron bows, and this was immensely helpful. It brought everyone to an even playing field. I brought Sylvain along this time. I had learned my lesson from the previous run, and Bernadetta was benched. I did struggle a bit at the beginning. I got a couple of inopportune misses, particularly with the groups of rogues and thieves, which were just my least favorite to deal with, because having pass on enemies is really dumb, I think. Because I think part of the fun of the game is enemy positioning, like blocking them with a wall. Shortly thereafter, a couple of really inopportune misses left Caspar at super low HP. There was someone in range. Once again, it was a bow unit, who I had calculated was going to attack him but leave him alive ultimately. That did not work out. Once again, a couple of inopportune misses brought Caspar to death's door. When the rogue attacked, it was a 70% chance that he would die, and ultimately, Caspar became my first unit loss of 3 houses. After that, I made it through the rest of the map, basically learning my lesson, and I was way better from there on out than I had been in any of the routes previously. There is something really interesting to note. For the first time in any of the runs, I would say that my best unit was actually not my lord. Even Edelgard, as busted as she is, came second fiddle to no, not Dorothea. What the hell, game? She saw combat like 3 times. Ferdinand von fucking Eyre. He reached level 5 effortlessly and got a string of ridiculously good level ups, which put him at this. That's really good defense, speed, and attack on a unit. He has access to lances. That's Tempest Lance. That's Night Kneeler. He's going to be really, really useful early game. And I gotta say, he was wholeheartedly deserving of the MVP award, and the fact that Dorothea got it is a goddamn tragedy, and she is my waifu, and I'm saying that. And now we're back to the Game Boy Color bootleg, which I still love way too fucking much. This chapter is ugly as hell. I will 100% admit that. It's long, pretty badly designed, but god do I love it. Mostly, it's super memeable. When you can't understand what's going on in the story, all you have to go off of are exclamation points, and my god are there a lot of exclamation points, and facial expressions. For instance, Happy Gomez. He's an NPC in the story. You think he's a bad guy? No, look at him. He's too happy to be a bad guy. Angry Holland. This is his only state of being. He joins this map and he is angry always. That's his gimmick. How about Alec over here, who is what I can only guess is contemplating your murder? Basically every early game unit is usable. Except maybe Ronan, who I sort of just left at the beginning of the map and literally no one even noticed.
Oh no, you forgot about Alec.
You're right. He's way back here. Well, literally no one commented on it because he's so forgettable. I left Ronan at the village at the start of the map.
Oh no!
Literally no one commented on it and I was waiting for it.
Holland joins pretty late in this map and he's not really good. He's sort of like a Leaf, but worse. And then Alec came scary close to death, and that meant that he had to sort of stay behind to play it safe, because he's my profile picture. I don't want him to die. He's like the mascot, right? even though somehow he always dies more than anyone else in my runs. And that brought me to my A team. 4 units who were left to take care of the rest of the map. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at them so you can properly understand what makes Game Boy Color Bootleg Emblem so special. Let's start with Halvan, who is as good as ever. Dude was the perfect setup character for everyone else to gain EXP and was always clutch when I needed a kill, sort of like Edelgard in 3 Houses. Well, except for this one bastard over here who dodged like 4 consecutive 75% hits. Dalshin, meanwhile, though he lacks any skill, can become virtually unkillable by exploiting a mechanic of the game. While you can only attack with the weapon type your class designates, you can go to the item menu and equip any item. This allows Dashin to equip the defense sword during enemy phase, which gives him solid attack and a whopping 18 defense. I used this to chip the boss, who could only do 2 damage to him. And now Leaf. Leaf is, at face value, a pretty consistent lord with the rest of the series. He doesn't seem all that good, and yet he actually has a really nice longevity. He has some solid skills as well as access to the best weapon type in the game, swords. His availability is perfect in a game where availability matters a lot, and ultimately he'll be pretty reliable later in the game. Finally, Karen. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that not all of you know the ins and outs of this game, so allow me to explain why Karen is so good. If you understand the skill system, you should probably be getting the picture that skills can make or break a unit in this game. Karen happens to have access to the best skills in the game in conjunction with being the best class in the game, as well as having the best availability in the game. While her start is shaky, by the time she hits level 4 she will have unlocked her first skill, Elite. When you kill a unit while proccing this skill, you gain double the EXP. This will allow her to start steamrolling since EXP is pretty low in this game, and every level up is going to give her more SP, strength, and defense. She'll likely be your highest level unit, and soon she will unlock the next skill, Triple. Imagine Fire Emblem 4 Pursuit, but instead of attacking twice, you could attack a 3rd time. Yeah, it's mildly overpowered to say the least. That's just a taste of why Karen is the best unit in the game, but you'll really see more of it even later. After recruiting Holland and taking care of the boss, I move on to the next map. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have more poll questions for you this week. First of all, should I be doing the longer or shorter parts? I'm sort of debating whether I should keep going with this once every 10 days, 30 to 40 minutes thing, or if I should be doing, half the games once every 7 days and just go for 15-minute parts. Second of all, name my wing spear. I feel like in every single run of Shadow Dragon, you gotta have a forged wing spear with the fan-chosen name, so that's what I'm going for. And the last one is going to be to pick my Genealogy pairings. I know nothing about this game, I'm just going to let you guys pick my pairings for me. I'll be streaming both Monday and Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 7 p.m. on the East Coast. I'll be playing Fire Emblem 5, 6, and 7 on Monday, and then Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, and Game Boy Color Bootleg on Tuesday. Last thing is, I've been debating on whether or not to get an AV/HDMI capture card. It's decently expensive, but it would allow me to play Shadow Dragon, Mystery of the Emblem, and Genealogy of the Holy War all on stream. Oh, and 3 Houses too. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next week.